Hi, I'm Brian Begley with enCloud9. If you're an admin with Dynamics 365 sales, the activity timeline might seem simple, but it's packed with potential. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through 5 settings every admin should review to keep your user's timeline useful, clean, and friendly. But first, if you like this content, please feel free to subscribe or share this video. So we're here in my CRM system, and I'm going to talk about changes that we make when we're working with clients to make the timeline user-friendly and accessible to all of my clients. The first thing we work on is when we're in the timeline, we look at how many different records you can create from the timeline. And I'm not sure why Microsoft makes it this way, but there's way too many options. For example, there might be an alert subscription or a booking alert or a comment or a customer voice alert, an invite redemption. Now, all of these activities I've talked about, they all come because of something else happening, like, for example, a workflow that creates an alert subscription or a comment that someone creates on one of your web portals. So you shouldn't be creating comments in your timeline anyway. So what we generally do is we try to take this down and just make sure that the only 4 records that you'll see here are the appointment, the email, the phone call, and task. Now you might have some others you use. So for example, if you do SMS messaging, you might want to be able to create an SMS or text message directly from the timeline. But for the most part, you'll only need the 4: appointment, email, phone call, and task. So let's show you how I clean those up. We're going to switch over to my development environment, and here we are on the contact form. Now in the contact form, we have the timeline right here in the center, right underneath the up next control. And if we click on the timeline, we're going to see all of the changes that we can make to customize the timeline. Let's start by turning off and on the records that we see when we're clicking on that plus button in the timeline. So first thing we want to do is scroll through this list, and we want to go down to where it says record settings for activities, notes, and posts. And let's open up activities, and you're going to see a list of a number of activities that you can see or create from within the timeline. So let's look at this first one here. You're not going to create a campaign activity in the timeline. So let's open that up. And do you see how it says enable, but it doesn't see create directly from timeline? What that means is if there is a campaign activity through the timeline for this contact, you will see it, but you can't create it directly from the timeline. So I would just leave this one alone, because if you do use marketing within Dynamics, this will allow you to see any of the campaign activities that you might have had for this contact. Let's move down to another one, however, though, portal comment. Now, portal comments usually only are created directly from the portal itself. And so here we see enable is enabled, but create directly from timeline is enabled. So I want to get create directly from timeline. And if I don't use a portal, maybe I want to turn that off as well. So I'm going to click done. Maybe I'm going to go through a few more in here. So invite redemption, we are never going to use that. So let's turn that off. Alert subscription, we're going to turn that one off. So we're going to go through this list and turn those off, and then we're going to save and publish our changes. Once those changes have gone through our system and have been published, I'm going to do a F5 refresh. And if we go on our timeline and we click on the plus button, we see this list of items that we create directly from the timeline has shortened up. So you want to maybe take a screenshot of the records you don't want to be visible in the timeline and paste it in OneNote, and then go back and get rid of the rest of them. But the 2 records we turned off no longer show as creatable in the timeline. So do that for all the records, all the activities you don't want your users to be able to create, and you'll have a simpler timeline. Let's go through a few more settings that we have in the timeline configuration. Now, up at the top here, we have record types to show. And by default, in the top of the timeline settings or properties, we see that we can choose the records that we show. So activities will show, notes will show, posts will show. If I don't want to use posts, which a lot of our clients don't want, so I can click to remove posts, and now when I change that, posts won't show in the contact timeline. We can also choose a lot of other settings. So for example, when we create a activity quickly in there, we can say, do we want to create a note or a post? Well, generally we use notes, so we're going to leave notes as the quick record. And how do we want to display them? And I want to display them descending, which means the newest records, the newest activities are showing on top. I can turn on or off the filter pane. I can also have the filter pane always expanded. I can turn on or off the search bar. You can turn on a control that allows you to say what you've missed. You can enable attachment preview for files. I usually leave all of these settings on as the default. Now, there's a few other changes I make when I'm configuring this, and we're going to open up, for example, a task, probably the most commonly created record in Dynamics 365, or at least for an activity. So let's find tasks in the list. There it is, tasks. So I am going to, of course, leave tasks enabled and the fact that they can be created from the timeline. Now, you can choose how you create a task. So by default, it's probably going to be quick create form, but you can choose to say use a main form, or what I usually like to change is use the main form but have it pop out as a dialog so that I can quickly create my task and then I can switch back to the contact record. I can also choose what commands I want to make available for myself when I'm looking at the record in the timeline. So I can assign records, close activities, add to queue, open the record, pin or unpin, which I am going to turn on, but I don't use queues. So I'm going to turn off queues, and I might want to move the pin in front of assign. So I'm going to drag and drop that. I can click done. I can go back and make some more changes to different timeline activities. But now let's take a look and see what's changed. So I'm going to click save and publish. And once again, I'm going to go back to my production environment. And when I go to create a task, you'll see that my main form dialog for a task opens up, which gives me more fields, and I can create my task due. I'll give it a due date of tomorrow. I'll put in some notes about the task, and then I'm going to click save and close. When I click save and close, the user experience for my people is they will go right back to the record that the task was created from. Also, like we just made a couple changes here on the quick actions available in the timeline. Pinning is now the first activity, and then assigning, completing, opening, and deleting. I hope that the changes that I've shown you today, enCloud9, of course, is a Dynamics 365 partner, so if you have any projects that you would like us to look at, please reach out to us. My name is Brian Begley. Thank you very much and have a great day.